The city shimmered under the early evening lights, a kaleidoscope of neon and glass. Cars hummed along the avenues, and pedestrians rushed by, their faces buried in their phones or conversations. Ethan Hale stepped out of his sleek black car, adjusting his tailored suit, and glanced at the high-rise headquarters of Hale Enterprises. The building was a monument to everything he had built: ruthless ambition, unyielding focus, and an empire worth billions. He inhaled deeply. Just another day of acquisitions and negotiations. As he strode down the sidewalk toward the entrance, a small tug at his sleeve startled him. He stopped abruptly. Looking down, he saw a boy, thin, with wide brown eyes, that spoke of weariness far beyond his 7 years. The boy held up a crumpled pamphlet with shaking hands. His clothes were worn, a size too big, and his face was smudged with city grime. "Please, sir, will you take one?" The boy's voice was small, almost drowned by the city noise. Ethan hesitated. He was not accustomed to disruptions, much less those that involved street kids. Yet something in the boy's eyes pulled at him. Sighing, he took the pamphlet. The boy nodded silently, his eyes glancing nervously around before he darted back into the crowd. Ethan barely noticed the words printed on the leaflet. Something about a local shelter needing donations. What did catch his eye was a small smeared handprint on the corner. As he inspected it, his heart stilled. There, near the wrist of the tiny handprint, was a faint but unmistakable mark, a crescent-shaped birthmark, identical to the one he'd had since birth. His fingers went cold, and the rush of the city dulled to a distant roar. He stared at the mark, confusion swirling into disbelief. This couldn't be. 7 years ago, there had been someone who had broken through his carefully constructed world. Grace. He hadn't said her name aloud in years, but it echoed now like a forgotten melody. She'd been everything he wasn't. Gentle, warm, and humble. They had met when he was still clawing his way to the top, back when love had seemed like something he could afford. But it hadn't lasted. His mother, Diana Hale, the indomitable matriarch of the Hale dynasty, had ensured that. He hadn't known the details, only that Grace had left, disappearing from his life without a trace. His mother had told him it was for the best, that she was beneath him, a distraction. He had believed her, or at least convinced himself to believe. Now his mind reeled. Was it possible? Could this boy? He turned abruptly, his gaze sweeping the street. The boy was gone, vanished into the flow of people. "Damn it!" he hissed under his breath. He shoved the pamphlet into his pocket and rushed into the building, his heart hammering. The sterile interior of his office did little to calm his nerves. Ethan paced, replaying the encounter, his thoughts tangled. The birthmark was too distinct to be a coincidence, and the timing. The boy was 7 years old. 7 years since Grace had vanished. Could his mother have lied to him? Could there be a child, his child, out there? He clenched his fists. He needed answers. Ethan grabbed his phone, his fingers hovering over the keypad. He thought about calling his mother, demanding the truth, but a deeper fear held him back. He needed proof before confronting her. If she had kept something this monumental from him, he wasn't sure he could ever forgive her. Instead, he dialed another number. "Marcus," he said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "I need you to find someone. A woman named Grace Bennett. She might have a child. Start with local shelters and community centers, and do it discreetly." His assistant didn't ask questions. "Understood, sir." As he hung up, Ethan's eyes fell on the cityscape beyond the glass. The world he had built felt suddenly fragile, a house of cards trembling in the breeze. Days passed. Each morning he walked the same path, hoping to see the boy again. He scoured the streets, his mind a whirlwind of memories and regrets. How had he let Grace slip away so easily? Why hadn't he fought for her? On the 5th evening, as he exited the building, he saw him. The boy was standing on the corner, gripping a bundle of leaflets. His eyes darted around, wary and cautious. Ethan's breath caught. He approached slowly, not wanting to frighten him. "Hey," he said softly. The boy looked up, his eyes widening in recognition. He didn't run. "What's your name?" Ethan asked. The boy hesitated, then whispered, "Jamie." Ethan's heart twisted. "Jamie, do you know your mum's name?" The boy nodded. "Grace." The name was a knife, cutting through the last shreds of doubt. Ethan swallowed hard. "Where is she, Jamie? Can you take me to her?" Jamie's eyes filled with something between fear and hope. He glanced around, then nodded. "Come with me." They walked together through winding streets, the skyscrapers giving way to older, worn-down buildings. Each step felt heavier than the last. When they finally stopped in front of a small, dimly lit building, Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears. Jamie led him inside. The room was modest, a mix of warmth and struggle etched into every corner. And then he saw her. Grace turned from the kitchen counter, her eyes widening in shock. The years had changed her, but she was still Grace, the woman he had once loved beyond reason. Her gaze darted between Ethan and Jamie, tears welling up. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. He stepped forward, his own eyes burning. "Grace, why didn't you tell me?" Before she could answer, a shadow crossed her face. Behind them, the door creaked open, and standing there, her expression as cold and unyielding as ever, was his mother. Ethan's mother, Diana Hale, stood in the doorway, her eyes cold and calculating as always. She took in the scene before her, her powerful son standing beside a street kid, and Grace, the woman she had spent years erasing from his life. Her lips curled into a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I should have known you'd find your way back here," Diana said, her voice dripping with disdain. Ethan's jaw clenched. The rage that simmered beneath his polished exterior threatened to boil over. "What are you doing here, Mother?" Diana's eyes flicked to Jamie, her expression hardening. "Cleaning up a mess that never should have existed." Grace's face went pale. She stepped protectively in front of Jamie, her fingers trembling as they rested on his thin shoulders. "He's not a mess," she whispered. Ethan took a step forward, his gaze fixed on his mother. "You lied to me. You made her disappear. And you knew about Jamie all this time, didn't you?" Diana's eyes narrowed. "I did what needed to be done, Ethan. You were on the brink of greatness. She would have dragged you down. And this child," she spat the word as if it left a bad taste in her mouth. "He was just another obstacle." Grace's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. "You threatened me. Told me if I ever contacted Ethan again, you'd ruin my life and his. I didn't have a choice." Ethan's heart twisted painfully. He turned to Grace, guilt crashing over him like a tidal wave. "Why didn't you fight back? Why didn't you tell me the truth?" Grace's shoulders sagged, the weight of 7 years of struggle evident in every line of her body. "I didn't want to destroy you. Your mother made it clear that if I stayed, your entire empire would crumble. She said you'd lose everything." Ethan's breath caught. He realized then that everything he'd built, everything he had sacrificed for, was standing on a foundation of lies, and he had let it happen. Jamie clung to Grace, his eyes wide and fearful. Ethan knelt, his voice softening. "Jamie, I'm your father. I didn't know. I'm so sorry." The boy blinked, tears welling in his eyes. "You're my dad?" Ethan nodded, his throat tight. "Yes, and I promise I'm here now. I won't let you go." Diana's voice sliced through the moment like a blade. "You're making a mistake, Ethan. You're throwing your future away for them." He stood slowly, his gaze meeting hers. For the first time, he saw his mother not as a guiding force, but as a manipulator who had stolen years of his life. "No," he said firmly. "The mistake was ever believing you cared about anything other than power." Diana's eyes flashed with anger. "You'll regret this." "Leave," he said quietly. "You've done enough damage." Diana's jaw tightened, but she turned on her heel and walked away, the echo of her footsteps fading into the night. The door clicked shut, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Ethan turned to Grace and Jamie, 1,000 emotions fighting for space in his heart. "I don't know how to make this right," he admitted, "but I want to try." Grace's eyes searched his face, uncertainty mingling with hope. "I don't need you to fix everything, Ethan. I just need you to be here." Jamie's small voice broke the silence. Can we be a family?" Ethan's chest ached. He reached out, pulling them both into a tentative embrace. "We'll figure it out. Together." For the first time in years, he felt something shift inside him. A glimmer of hope. The warmth of that fragile embrace lingered far longer than the moment itself. But reality, cold and relentless, waited just beyond the door. Ethan knew that reconnecting with Grace and Jamie was only the beginning. The threads of his carefully controlled life were unraveling, and what lay ahead would be anything but simple. They sat together in the small living room of Grace's apartment. It was cozy, yet worn with the signs of struggle, scuffed floors, thrift store furniture, and faded curtains that barely shielded them from the city's glow. Jamie nestled next to his mother, peering curiously at Ethan, as if still trying to decide whether he was real. Ethan's gaze softened. "Jamie, what do you like to do?" he asked, trying to bridge the chasm of 7 lost years. Jamie shrugged. "I like drawing, and reading about spaceships." Ethan smiled faintly. "Spaceships, huh? You know, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut." Grace's eyes flickered with the ghost of a smile. "I remember." The shared memory pulled at something deep within him. He clenched his fists, fighting the guilt that gnawed at his edges. He'd missed everything. Jamie's first words, his first steps, his entire childhood so far. And Grace, she'd faced it all alone. "I want to fix this," Ethan said softly. "I want to take care of you both." Grace's expression tightened. "You can't just swoop in and fix everything, Ethan. Life doesn't work that way. Jamie doesn't even know you yet." "I know that," he admitted. "But I want to try. I want to be here for both of you." Jamie looked up at him, his eyes uncertain. "Will you come to my school tomorrow? There's a parent day, but I usually don't have anyone to go with me." The quiet vulnerability in his voice shattered Ethan's heart. "Of course I'll be there." Grace hesitated, doubt and hope warring on her face. "Ethan, are you sure? You don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted firmly. "I've missed too much already." The next morning, Ethan found himself standing outside a worn brick building. Westwood Community School. Children swarmed the entrance, their laughter filling the air. Ethan adjusted his cufflinks, feeling strangely out of place in his tailored suit. He caught sight of Grace and Jamie waiting near the steps. Grace had dressed in her best, a simple blouse and skirt that didn't quite hide the wear and tear of years gone by. Jamie clutched her hand, his eyes lighting up when he saw Ethan. "You came," Jamie exclaimed, his smile breaking through the clouds of hesitation. Ethan smiled back. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." They walked inside together, past peeling paint and faded bulletin boards covered with crayon drawings. Ethan felt the curious stares of other parents and teachers. He was used to being the center of attention, but here it felt different, more personal, more raw. Jamie led them to his classroom, where a cheerful teacher with graying hair greeted them. "Jamie, I see you brought someone today." Jamie beamed. "This is my dad." The words were simple, but they hit Ethan like a freight train. My dad. He swallowed hard, his throat tightening. "It's nice to meet you," the teacher said warmly. "Jamie's a wonderful student." Ethan's heart swelled with pride. He glanced at Grace, who offered him a tentative smile. Maybe, just maybe, they could piece this broken puzzle back together. The day passed in a blur of paper crafts, reading circles and hesitant smiles. Ethan marveled at Jamie's world. So small, yet so vibrant. He watched his son interact with other children, saw the way he lit up when he talked about spaceships and dinosaurs. It was a world Ethan had never known, and it both enchanted and terrified him. But as the afternoon sun began to dip, reality clawed its way back in. Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Marcus. He stepped outside, his jaw tightening. "What is it?" "There's something you need to know," Marcus said, his voice low. "Your mother. She's not done. She's been making calls, pulling strings. There's a custody case being filed against Grace. They're claiming she's unfit to care for Jamie." Ethan's blood ran cold. "What? On what grounds?" "She's using everything. Grace's income, the neighborhood she lives in, even Jamie's absence from certain medical records. Your mother's building a case that Jamie would be better off with, well, you, without Grace." Ethan's hands shook. "She wouldn't dare." "She already has," Marcus said grimly. "I thought you should know. It'll hit the courts next week." Ethan's mind spun. This was his mother's final play, using the system to tear Jamie away from Grace, to destroy the family he was just beginning to reclaim. He ended the call and leaned against the wall, the weight of the world pressing down on him. When he returned to the classroom, Grace immediately knew something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked quietly. He hesitated, the truth a bitter taste on his tongue. "My mother. She's trying to take Jamie from you." Grace's face went white. Her hands trembled. "She can't do that." Ethan swallowed hard. "She can, and she's already started." Tears welled in her eyes. "I can't lose him, Ethan. He's my whole world." "You won't," Ethan promised, his voice fierce. "I won't let that happen." But even as he said the words, fear gnawed at the edges of his resolve. His mother's power was vast, her influence stretching into places most people couldn't even see. Fighting her would be like fighting a shadow, elusive, relentless, and everywhere. Jamie looked between them, sensing the tension. "Are you mad at each other?" he whispered. Ethan knelt, his hands resting on Jamie's small shoulders. "No, buddy, we're not mad. We're just figuring things out. But everything's going to be okay." Grace wiped her tears, a steely determination settling in her eyes. "We have to fight this, no matter what it takes." Ethan nodded. "We will." But deep down, a seed of doubt took root. Could they really win against a woman who had already stolen so much from them? And if they couldn't, what would happen to Jamie? The shadows of the past were closing in, and the future had never felt more uncertain. The days leading up to the custody hearing were a blur of tension and preparation. Ethan's apartment, usually a sanctuary of pristine order, now resembled a war room. Legal documents and notes littered the polished mahogany desk, and the constant buzz of phone calls filled the air. Grace sat at the kitchen table, her fingers curled around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Dark circles ringed her eyes. Jamie was at a friend's house, blissfully unaware of the storm about to crash through his world. Ethan stood by the window, his silhouette rigid against the city skyline. He turned to Grace, his voice strained. "Our lawyers are confident, but it's going to be close. My mother has influence in places I didn't even know existed." Grace nodded, her expression weary but determined. "We have to try. Jamie deserves better than this, better than being a pawn in her game." He walked over, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. "I'm so sorry it's come to this. You shouldn't have to fight for your own son." She looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with tears she refused to shed. "We both made choices, Ethan. Now we fix them. Together." A knock at the door shattered the fragile silence. Ethan's jaw tightened. He opened it to find Marcus, his face grim. "There's been a development," Marcus said, glancing at Grace. "It's not good." "Just tell us," Ethan demanded. Marcus hesitated. "Your mother has new evidence. She's claiming Grace was involved in an incident of neglect when Jamie was an infant. It's fabricated, but it's convincing enough to sway the judge." Grace's face went pale. "That's a lie. I've never neglected Jamie." Ethan's fists clenched. "She's desperate. She knows she's losing control." Marcus nodded. "It's a dirty play, but it might work. We need a counter-argument. Something that proves Grace is the best person for Jamie." Grace swallowed hard. "And what if we don't have that?" Ethan took her hand, his voice steady. "We'll find it. We have to." The morning of the hearing was cold and grey. The courthouse loomed before them, an imposing structure of marble and steel. Reporters lingered by the entrance, their cameras flashing as Ethan, Grace, and Jamie arrived. "Mr. Hale, is it true you're fighting your own mother in court?" "Ms. Bennett, do you think you can win against the Hales?" Ethan shielded Grace and Jamie as they pushed through the chaos. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation. The courtroom buzzed with hushed whispers. At the front, Diana Hale sat with her lawyer, her expression serene as if she had already won. Ethan's gaze hardened. Not this time. They took their seats. Jamie clung to Grace's hand, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. Ethan leaned down. "It's going to be okay, buddy. Just stay close to your mum." Jamie nodded, his small fingers trembling. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, entered the room. "This court is now in session." The proceedings began. Diana's lawyer presented their case with ruthless precision, painting Grace as a struggling single mother unable to provide for Jamie. Fabricated records, twisted facts, and subtle slander piled up like bricks in a wall designed to keep Ethan and Grace out of Jamie's life. Grace's lawyer countered fiercely, but the damage was done. Doubt seeped into the room like poison. Finally, it was Ethan's turn to speak. He stood, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "Your Honor," he began, his voice clear and strong, "I was raised to believe that power and wealth were the only things that mattered. That family was something to be controlled, not cherished. My mother taught me that, and I let her control my life for too long." He turned, meeting Diana's cold gaze. "But family isn't about power. It's about love, trust, and sacrifice. Grace has given Jamie all of that and more. She's fought every day to give him a life filled with kindness and hope. I can't say the same for myself, or for my mother." Diana's eyes narrowed, her mask of composure cracking. Ethan took a deep breath. "Jamie deserves to be with the person who loves him unconditionally. That person is Grace, not me, not my mother. Her. A hush fell over the courtroom. The judge's eyes softened as she looked at Jamie. Would you like to say something, young man? Jamie nodded. His small voice trembled but held firm. I want to stay with my mum. She takes care of me. She loves me. And I love her. Tears streamed down Grace's face. Ethan's vision blurred as he blinked back his own. The judge's gavel struck. In light of the evidence and testimony, I rule in favor of Grace Bennett retaining full custody of Jamie. A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. Grace hugged Jamie tightly, sobs of joy and relief shaking her frame. Ethan turned to leave, the weight lifting from his shoulders. He had done the right thing, but a soft hand on his arm stopped him. Ethan, Grace whispered. He looked at her, his heart in his eyes. You don't have to go, she said, her voice trembling. We're a family, if you want to be. His breath caught. Are you sure? She smiled through her tears. We've lost too much time already. Let's not lose any more. Jamie looked up at him, his eyes hopeful. Dad, come home with us? Ethan's heart cracked wide open. He knelt, pulling them both into his arms. I'm not going anywhere. In that moment, the shadows of the past dissolved. All that remained was love, raw, imperfect, and real. And for the first time in his life, Ethan Hale knew he was truly home.